Democratic India must grow rapidly to meet the aspirations of 1.25 billion people.
So the mere announcement of India having 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 has been big.
India making this move could be pivotal for the whole industry and for the whole world.
For India, renewable energy is the new source of oil.
For the renewable energy to really be useful, we got to capture the solar, wind and hydro all three together, especially the way the Indian Peninsula has been blessed with.
India is leapfrogging many stages of the renewable energy evolution in the country.
The world is being battered by extreme weather events with increasing frequency. Its impact is only too real for India. Climate change and its devastating effects is no longer a theory.
2013, 2014, 2015. If you look at these 3 years, we had deficit rainfall. By 2016, close to 18 states in India went through drought-like situation. There were other states which went through flood-like situation. 2/3 of our population is still dependent on climate-centric economic sectors. Whether it is agriculture, forestry, fisheries, things that we have to do with water, forest and land. And these sectors are going to be deeply impacted by the changing climate.
Climate change is caused by the rising levels of carbon dioxide, or CO2, in our atmosphere. CO2 traps heat, leading to rise in the global temperatures. The temperature rise, in turn, affects weather patterns, leading to extreme events. More fossil fuel we burn, the more CO2 we release in the atmosphere. Temperature rise caused due to such massive burning of fossil fuels is measured against the global temperature before industrialization, also called pre-industrial period. Scientists want to limit the temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Any rise above 2 degrees would result in irreversible changes to the environment.
The 2 degree has caught the imagination of people, but the fact is it is a political agreement. Scientifically speaking, even at 1.5 degrees, temperature increase compared to the pre-industrial era, which is about 1850 onwards. Many communities, poor communities, especially communities who are dependent on ecosystem for their survival, many vulnerable ecosystems like Sundarbans or other vulnerable ecosystems like Himalayas are going to be deeply impacted with this 1.5 degree temperature increase.
Global bodies like the UNFCCC bring together national leaders to chalk out a strategy to combat climate change. Efforts revolve around speedy deployment of smarter, greener technology that reduce carbon emissions. This includes transforming electricity generation, which in 2014 contributed to 25% of all carbon emissions in the world. That's why renewable energy is so crucial to cut down carbon emissions. Developing economies like China and India are hungry for electricity and therefore are among the world's largest emitters of greenhouse gases. There's global pressure on India to implement green technology. But deploying such technology can have a crippling effect on a developing economy. That in turn affects the poorest members of society, many of whom don't have access to energy. But something unexpected happened in the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Paris. Prime Minister Narendra Modi set out a bold vision to power India's future.
By 2030, we will reduce emissions by 33 to 35% of 2005 levels and produce 40% of our power from non-fossil fuels.
According to estimates, that would mean generating nearly 340 gigawatts of power from non-fossil fuels or renewable energy. To put that in perspective, this figure is higher than India's total power generation capacity today of about 320 gigawatts. So how will India pull this off?
We will achieve it by expanding renewable energy, by adding 175 gigawatts of renewable energy generation by 2022.
Well, there was a real flip in this country. A decade ago, you'd come here and the attitude was, hey, it's our turn to grow dirty. You got your turn, you in the West. Now it's our turn, so don't lecture us. And then I think a couple things happened. One, as the country was growing, the air got dirtier and dirtier and simply became unlivable. So that path simply was not possible or sustainable in the long run. Second thing that happened here was innovation. New companies started to emerge in the solar area, the wind area, the battery area, the hydro area that were quite innovative in producing clean energy. And people began to realize that, wow, not only is this more healthy for us physically, but this could be financially healthy.
The benefits of tapping into inexhaustible and clean sources of energy, such as the sun or wind, is apparent. However, on a large scale, these sources of power were considered impractical. The cost of renewable energy was much higher than conventional sources such as coal and gas. Importantly, the reliability of such power was always called into question. After all, solar power can only be generated when the sun shines. Wind turbines turn only when wind blows. And hydro plants are dependent on river flow. However, a new generation of technology is not only making renewable energy not only reliable, but also reducing the cost of generation to a fraction of what it was just 5 years ago. Despite all this, India faces a tremendous challenge to bring its vision to fruition. To help meet its targets, gigantic renewable energy plants are being set up across the country. These plants are set to change the face of renewable energy in India forever. November 2015, global leaders meet at Paris to take decisive steps to curb global warming. India reveals a bold new vision of generating 175 gigawatts of power through renewable sources of energy.
So the mere announcement of India having 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 has been big. Let me say it has been massive.
A large chunk of the 175 gigawatts will come from solar power. The rest coming from wind, biogas and small hydro projects. A big part of India's plan is to construct huge facilities, designated ultra-mega solar parks. With a capacity of 1 gigawatt, the flag bearer of India's Mission Solar is in Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. It is among the world's largest solar power parks and also the first solar park that will be connected to the national grid.
Not only for Andhra Pradesh, It is one of the biggest park in the world in 5,000 acres of land, and also 7,000 crores they are investing now. It is a major breakthrough in renewable energy.
The Kurnool project of this scale was never planned or implemented globally. There were other projects of a scale of between 10 to 25 megawatts, and so the scale of this project was pretty unique.
Greenko, India's largest owner and operator of renewable energy projects, with over 3 gigawatts operational capacity in solar, wind, and hydro domains spread across India. But Kurnool proved to be the company's most challenging project. Typically, 5 acres are needed to generate 1 megawatt of solar power. So the 500 megawatt plant that Greenko is developing is spread across 2,766 acres. More than 2.5 million solar panels have been installed on this area.
If you were to line up these modules end to end, back to back, it would be a 5,000 kilometer long line.
That's like driving from Srinagar to Kanyakumari and nearly all the way back up to Nagpur. Solar panels are made of a class of materials called photovoltaics. The electrons of such materials enter a high energy state when hit by the energy contained in sunlight. This leads to electricity generation. The form of this electricity is called direct current. However, to power day-to-day appliances and machines, this electricity needs to be converted to alternating current or AC. After the conversion, around 5,000 kilometers of cables that have been buried in the ground to transmit this current generated by the solar panels to the nearest substation. The length of the trenches for the cable, 500 kilometers. That's like digging a trench from Kurnool to Hyderabad. Gigawatt-scale national grid-connected solar parks, like the one in Kurnool, represent a tectonic shift in the way we think about renewable energy.
From just a source to reduce carbon, it has become a mainstream energy source as it became competitive with fossil fuel sources, and renewable energy is now a significant part of the economic activity in most countries globally.
Until recently, replacing coal or gas-based energy with renewable sources was unthinkable. Renewable energy was simply too expensive for a developing economy like India. However, renewable energy tariffs have fallen drastically in the last 7 years. In 2010, solar power tariff was around Rs 12 per unit. The solar power tariff at Kurnool is 3 times cheaper, a mere Rs 4 per unit. And the prices continue to fall. This fall is triggered partly by the falling cost of technology.
I think foremost would be the fall in the module prices. So they have fallen from about 1.2 per watt in 2013-14 to about 35 cents now. And in fact, our expectation is that they will continue to fall to close to about 25 to 27 cents in the next few quarters maybe. I think equally importantly is that the risks in many of these projects are going down because of the government incentive.
There are 2 major risks for solar power players. Acquisition of thousands of acres of land and finding buyers for the power generated by the plant. Both these issues can be addressed through changes in policy. That's exactly what India has done.
Now, if you look at the solar parks, they provide you with the land. So land availability is not a constraint. Along with that, the government has ensured that all the key solar parks that come through, they will be adequately connected to the grid through transmission via the green energy corridors.
What this means is that solar power operators like Greenko don't have to worry about selling the power they generate. They have assurance that the power they generate will be bought by a central organization. That in turn creates a virtuous cycle. Banks and other financial institutions are willing to lend money at lower interest rates for projects operating out of solar parks.
Imagine that a country of 1.3 billion people makes the kind of ambitious commitment to clean energy that India has. Clean tech is going to become cheaper, it's going to become smarter, and then it'll become more available to more people, and the curve will get steeper and steeper. So I think India making this move could be pivotal for the whole industry and for the whole world.
Generating energy at a gigawatt scale and feeding the grid brings with it a huge challenge. Renewable energy sources like solar, wind or hydro are unpredictable or seasonal. However, grid stability depends on reliable and predictable power supply. Without that, there would be a mismatch between supply and demand, leading to power outages. So how can renewable energy generation become more predictable and reliable? Renewable power operators are coming up with new strategies to counter such variability.
For the renewable energy to really be useful, we got to capture the solar, wind and hydro, all three together, especially the way the Indian Peninsula have been blessed with.
Greenco has diversified into wind, solar and hydropower. Solar